Bitcoin July 21st, and Bitcoin is consolidating this new phase. In other words, it has now fully entered the upper half of the channel. The channel is formed by the 60,000 support and the 68,000 resistance. The middle of the channel is obviously 64,000, and it's entering this new phase as we've seen in recent days, and now it's really consolidating it. We're going to set 64,000 as the main support level for this phase. Today, like on other days, what we're going to do is look for Bitcoin's movement for this week. That is from July 21st to the 24th or 25th, and see how the price will react. We're going to do this not by looking at indicators or anything else, but by focusing on the strategies of the big players or institutions, since they're the ones who really move the market. Next, I'm Mikel Vasquez, and after 15 years in professional trading, I can tell you that all markets work the same way. There's a very small group, institutions, big players, or whales if you want to call them that, who move the price and indicators however they want and always win. And then there's a huge group, the retail traders, who almost always lose, except when they get lucky. We want to switch groups. Even though we're retail traders in our own portfolios, so to speak, we want to operate like the big players and win the way they do. What we have to do is simple. Just figure out what their intention is, what they're trying to do to move the price, and place our positions in that direction. We'll do this, as I said, with a 7-day forecast. We'll also look at which phase of Wyckoff we're in for the long term. I explain these kinds of things, Wyckoff, the US market, the best times to enter, strategies, in my course, which is currently available with a significant discount. I've left a link in the description for you. But without further ado, let's dive into a deep analysis of this movement. As I was saying, price always moves, in every time frame, through Wyckoff phases. You have to understand which phase we're in on the larger time frame in order to make sense of it on smaller time frames. Right now, we're on the 4-hour chart, which is our headquarters, and in the long term, when we switch to the weekly chart, we see that the Wyckoff phase we're in is an accumulation phase, and we're already entering the upper part of the channel. In other words, the channel, as I mentioned, is formed between 60,000 and 69,000, and it's already getting close to that upper zone. As long as it doesn't break either 60,000 or 69,000, we're in that accumulation phase, which can last for months, as is typical. You see these phases, for example, distribution, second distribution, accumulation, that usually last for months. Sometimes they last just 2 weeks, like the last distribution, and in this case, we can expect there's still more movement building up, and we'll see a very significant distribution higher up. But for now, as long as it doesn't break, we understand that in the long term, we're in accumulation. With that in mind, on the 4-hour chart, we see that accumulation in detail, which is it broke through those 69,000, touched 60,000, then went back up close to 69,000, moving up and down like that. As you can see, it usually plays around every time it crosses the middle of the channel, but the intention is always to go there. Normally, when the movement is upward, it usually takes longer than when it's downward. Usually, in trading, they say that prices go up by stairs and come down by elevator. And honestly, that's exactly how it is. Normally, look, to go from these 60,000 to it's already entering the upper channel in a definitive way, you can see that it took a long time. On the other hand, when it dropped, it did so in a much more drastic way. Well, we can also take that into account for our positions. But that's really just an anecdote. Let's get back to the price movement. Last week, we said it was going to hit the middle of the channel, 64,000, from below. It was always going to retest it from below. And over the weekend, we already mentioned that those retests were going to shift from the lower area to the upper area. In other words, now every time it hits 64,000, it will do so with a downward move, not like before when it was an upward move. That already tells us we're entering a new phase. So the important channel now, so to speak, is going to be between 64 and 68. That's the range we need to keep an eye on. Yesterday, we said that we would start seeing the price in the 65 or 66 range, and that's exactly what we're seeing today. We'll probably see a small pullback throughout the day, today, July 21st, because as I've told you, it goes up like a staircase, and you know, a staircase goes like this. It's not like an elevator that goes straight up. Buried yet. So what we're most likely to see today or tomorrow is a pullback, looking for the 64 zone, that support level to gain momentum. It probably won't go as low as 64, but we can expect the price to be around 65 to get ready for the final move. What we're going to be looking for these days, the forecast might take a week or maybe a few more days, is for this move to reach somewhere near the 68,000 zone. That price could vary a little. It could be 68, 68,200, or 67. But once it reaches this price, we'll see how that intention starts to change, and we'll start to see that bounce, aiming for the 60,000 zone, but with some nuances. It's very rare for the move to go straight down quickly, like we saw here. Instead, we'll see the move develop very slowly. But once we look at it with some perspective, we can clearly see the movement down, and up again. Then we'll see more moves down, then up, until one of the zones I mentioned earlier in the long term is broken. That is either the 68 or the 60 zone. How do we know if that breakout is real? Well, we need to see a move that is backed by volume. Volume is where the institutions are. I always tell you that price action, which is what we were looking at, helps us understand how Bitcoin's price is moving. But the real manipulations happen in the volume because institutions can't hide their activity in the volume. Whenever we see a spike above 1.5, it's a sign that institutions are present and manipulating the price. Sometimes it's a bit lower, depending on how active the market is, like this week, which has been pretty quiet. But in any case, we're seeing these volume spikes from institutions manipulating the price a bit, slowly pushing it toward that area. The forecast, like I said, is to come back a bit closer to 65, maybe even touch the 64 area, and then, in a clear move, approach 69 and then drop back down again. It could go down or up for months until this accumulation phase ends in the long term. Every day I post analyses like this, looking for those clues that tell us what the next move is going to be, because any little thing, any element, can tip us toward one position or another, and it's important to always enter trades the right way. For example, if now it reaches the 68,000 zone and we start to see this increasing volume and we see that the price, the spread of the candles, matches perfectly with the volume, then we would see that the long-term accumulation phase has changed and we're in a markup phase. Personally, I still don't expect that to happen in this move, but you have to stay very alert. We can also see how the price is going to behave, how the price is behaving in the short term with 15 or 30-minute time frames to enter for scalping or intraday trading. We see that it has risen quite significantly. Now, signs of exhaustion are starting to appear in that upward movement, and we can sense that it's about to start heading down toward the 65 zone. In any case, you always have to pay close attention to all the elements, especially high volume, the shape of the Japanese candlesticks, looking for those wicks at the top that signal a downward move, and the arrival at a support or resistance zone. Very good. Now, what we're going to do is look at how the challenge went in June. Sorry, the July challenge. You already know that I started with a $500 account. I'll show you the entry from yesterday, July 1st. And now I'm making micro entries of $15, $20, $25 because the account is bigger now, and I always go with the trend. When I see that it's the right moment, I get in and out quickly with a profit. No, I don't try to make more than one entry per day. And you see, I started with 500, and today, which is July 21st, I have 877. What I'll do is give away that extra amount. Right now it would be 377, but let's hope we reach 500 among everyone who signs up at mex.com and makes their first deposit. I'm Mikkel Vasquez, and this is Daily Bitcoin Analysis. Thank you so much for watching this video, and as I always say, this is not financial advice. I'm just sharing my experience with you after more than 15 years in professional trading. See you tomorrow with more insights on Bitcoin's movement.